Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and this is Chasing Legends. Welcome back to Chasing Legends. Please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. Check out our website, www.legendsofsuperstitionmountains.com. Go through our videos, leave a comment. We do like our comments, and we sometimes answer if you have a good question. So moving from there, let's get to it. So we're running behind a little because we took off and decided to drive, and we ended up in Wilcox and Benson, Texas Canyon, Dragoon, at the Cochise Stronghold, and had a great time. And you'd think we would have filmed while we were out there. I don't think we filmed one piece of footage. We took a lot of pictures, but I don't think we filmed anything. It's kind of strange in hindsight. You think that's what we do, but we just took pictures, and you can catch that stuff on Facebook and Instagram. But we had a great trip. Good time, myself and Trevor, along with Greg Davis, who's a founder of the museum. And I could go on about that trip probably for about an hour, but that's not what we're going to talk about because we weren't really chasing any legends. I did look through our treasure files to see if there were any treasure stories. There was a stagecoach robbery, which is quite well known in Wilcox. The sheriff actually went out and did the stagecoach robbery, and they caught him, and he ended up going to prison for it. And that's kind of a fun story. Maybe sometime we'll do it. And we did discover in Wilcox, while Rex Allen and Rex Allen Jr. from Wilcox and all that, there's a big glass case in the Chiricahua Museum, and you look down and there's a replica belt. Ted DeGrazia, the $1 Million Man from wrestling, actually was born in Wilcox. So he's not in the Cowboy Hall of Fame, though, because he wasn't really a cowboy. No, today we're going to talk about a gentleman, and I'll just say his first name is Eric. Met him. He's one of the people came through the rendezvous. He's probably been coming off and on for probably 6 or 7 years. He came, we talked. He'd be like, hey, what's some good places? He'd listen to people talk. I think he was one of those guys that just kind of comes out Saturday, maybe stays or doesn't stay. I don't remember much around the campfires, but kind of drift in or out. Might not see him for a year or two, but I would hear from him. He'd message or something about, hey, I got a question about a spot. And I think he started out because of coming to the rendezvous and the interest from the TV show and stuff, of just kind of like, I want to go out hiking, I want to see some of this stuff. And I know initially it was like Knife Hill and some various spots around the mountains. And then it got a little more serious. He'd say, well, I want to make a trip. What's a good overnight trip? And we'd talk about it, and I'd tell him 3 or 4 spots and where you can set up a good camp. And then it became a little more extended. Hey, I got this book and I read that. What are your thoughts on this? And I realized he was kind of becoming more and more a Dutchman and more curious, kind of honing in, spending time in very specific spots. Now, I told him initially, I said, you can go out by the Silver Chief, and I gave him the location of that. And I told him up in Peters Mesa some spots he could go up there and check out. I'm out by Bluff Springs. Some different varied areas where people always claim that, well, the Lost Dutchman must be here or there. And kind of left it more to his own interpretation. Go out here, here's some kind of spots you can look at, some things indicate there could be some activity. Make up your own mind. And that was kind of cool. Well, eventually, in this last year, he did stop by and talk to me. And I thought it was kind of a funny story because he'd been talking to me. He wanted to go in through Tortilla. He went through Tortilla the back way into Peters Mesa, through Peters Canyon. And then he finally asked me a question one day. He said, why do they call it Lost Dutch Canyon? He said, is that a clue of some sort? And I was like, probably the Forestry Service just kind of came up with the idea for it. I didn't know anything particular what reason why. It's been Lost Dutch Canyon since probably the teens, early 20s. So it's been named Lost Dutch Canyon for a very long time, probably around 100 years. And I said, I just don't really have a real clear understanding of why it's Lost Dutch Canyon, particularly over anywhere else. And it feeds, if you go down through Tortilla, follow Tortilla Road down to the old Tortilla Ranch site, it's the canyon that you take north of the Miller Mines, but you take it, it intersects down into Fish Creek Canyon. It's a great hike. It's a great area to go in. Fish Creek Canyon is just such a great canyon, whether it's upper or lower, wherever you are at. So I made a trip, and he told me about the trip. He said he got in, parked his vehicle. He said he was a bit worried because there used to be a lot of vandalism down at Tortilla Ranch. People would park their vehicles and leave them there for days. And he went in. I thought at first he'd be more interested in possibly Tortilla or one of those places, but he seemed very particular about Lost Dutch Canyon. Told him a few spots we'd been to, a few things I found of interest going Lost Dutch into Fish Creek. And told him, definitely it's not a loop hike type of thing because of the distance of how long Fish Creek Canyon is. So he went down to Lost Dutch. I think he was kind of camping down more the connectivity down towards Fish Creek Canyon, but he wanted to explore Lost Dutch. And I thought that's kind of interesting because I think most people just use it as a way to get down into Fish Creek Canyon. So he told me he got down in there, set up his camp the first night, and he went out and he was checking the area out. And he said he came back about 5 or 6 hours later, and he said he couldn't put his finger on it, but things in his camp seemed to have been moved around a little. He said, I couldn't swear by it, but it just seemed like, pretty sure that wasn't there. And this seemed to be moved. And he thought, did someone come through? His camp was kind of out of the way, so he didn't think anybody, and he hadn't seen or heard anybody all day. And he said, but it kind of bothered him a bit. And I told him there's been a few people that have kind of made kind of semi-permanent camps down in that area, but I hadn't heard anything in a number of years. So I told him you always keep a lookout, but you can generally tell if someone's around, especially you'll smell the smoke in the morning or someone has a campfire or something like that. He said there was no sign. So I kind of blew it off. Slept, everything's good. Second day, he said he went out again. He said he went out a little longer that day. It was close to 7 or 8 hours. He said he got back a little late. He said I got back again, and he said I knew one of my spoons I'd cleaned it and set it out. My spoon's gone. And he said he looked all over the camp and couldn't figure out where he would have misplaced the spoon. He said it's just gone. And he said again, it felt like certain things had been moved around or just sort of slightly changed. And he kind of went through his stuff to see anything else was missing. He said nothing was there. So he said he went to sleep that night. And at night, he could hear scuffling or shuffling around outside. He heard noises in the dark. And he was kind of like, this is weird. And when you're out there alone, definitely that can kind of set your alarm up. He went out without a handgun or anything. So he said he didn't know what to do. He just tried to kind of stay very quiet and see if someone got up near the tent and stuff. He said he had a hiking stick in there with him. So he figured he kind of very carefully grabbed that and figured if someone went to open the tent or something, he'd just kind of run or just sit up and just kind of start jabbing it at the opening. But he said nothing like that happened, but he could hear movement and stuff. Got up in the morning. Again, a number of things he had out, he said, were moved around again. And he's kind of looking, and he had a tin coffee cup. And I've had one of those, and those are kind of like real favorites. They last forever. But he said it was gone. And he said he looked and looked and looked and knew he had finished off his last of his coffee in it, and there was a little bit left, but he said he set it up on this rock that he was using a little bit like a table. And he said he found it very odd. Why would someone take, someone took my spoon and someone took my cup. So he kind of looked all over there. He couldn't find any sign of anything, but he said, I'm not a professional tracker. So he, kind of spent the day kind of more listening for somebody than looking around anymore. He said at that point, he was kind of more concerned of the mystery of what's going on in his camp. So he went around, didn't see anybody around, no scent of, campfires or anything like that. He just couldn't come up with it and whatnot. Got back. And he said he'd taken a pair of socks because he said his laundry was getting stinky, and he finally had changed out socks and set them in a tree, and one of his socks is gone. And he said he just kind of looked at it as like, why would somebody take one of my socks? And he's like, somebody has to be messing with me. And of course he said, I did for a little while kind of think, am I really onto something? Where have I been that someone's trying to tell me get out? And he said, it's really weird how his mind turned and started going into the route of like someone's, wants me to leave the area and all that. So then this night he goes to sleep, And he said again he could hear someone in his camp. And he kind of could hear things move around a little and all. But he said again, I don't have a... What am I going to do? Jump out of the tent? And, it's pretty dark out. If I turn on a flashlight, what am I going to do if I catch somebody or something? So he said he just laid in there. And he said it happened several times during the night. He could hear it and the noise and stuff. And really got under his nerves. So he decided after that, it was about time he was going to head out anyways. He said, I might as well head back. Because at that point, he's worried if it is a person, they're messing with him or whatever's going on. But he said, I never saw any lights, flashlights and stuff. So he says, it's really disturbing. And then I'm wondering if they got back to my car. And if I'm going to have a trouble, I'm going to go back, the window's smashed out, something's wrong. Or else the car's gone, right? So, and I always find it unusual how these guys get these little SUV cars back into Tortilla, because how they get but they do. Jesse Capens did as well, so they do get them back in there. I'm sure they tear them up pretty good. Anyhow, so he gets up the last morning. Again, things are kind of moved around, shifted that he had out. He said, anything that was like, he just kind of blew him away. He got everything packed up, had one of these smaller, it wasn't quite a one-man tent, I think he said it was a little bit, but it was a very small tent. So he said he got everything packed up, checked everything, looked around again, kind of like decided to go around the camp one time before he left just to see if he could see any sign of anything. Said he didn't. He started going down the trail. He said he was probably about 100 yards, 200 yards before he was getting back up into Tortilla, up out of Lost Dutch. And he said he found his sock laying there on the ground. And he said, so whoever took my socks just decided to leave it there beside the trail. And he said he wondered if it was even his, but he said, what are the odds that there's just going to be another random sock out there by itself? So he said he grabbed his sock up, looked around, felt kind of weird, and got back to his car and went home. It bugged him. He talked to me, and I said, I don't really know if anybody being out there and stuff. So he was determined. So he said, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get one of these trap cameras like hunters use. So he went down, bought one of those $200-300 for a real good one. He said he bought one of those, went back and decided to stay a night at that same camp because it's not a tough hike or anything. And he said he really did like it in there. He said it was really nice. So he told me this year. So he gets back, he puts the trap camera up, aims it kind of at the stuff, and he said he had a new cup and some utensils and stuff. He said he kind of went out into the day, came back, nothing had moved or anything. So he thought, you know what, maybe it really was a person. Someone was back in here while I was in here. Now they're gone, so nobody's messing with me. So he went to sleep that night and he could hear movement and he heard things. And he said, that's just kind of strange. He said, and again, he said it was like I would hear some shuffling or movement and then be really quiet. And then I think I could hear something moving around. And he said, I think I heard my cup move once because it kind of the resonance. He said you wouldn't hear necessarily metal on rock like that. And this time he had taken a pistol with him. So he was laying in there, figured if someone was going to mess with him again. He got up the next morning and he went to the trap camera. And he decided, I'm going to pack everything up and I'm going to go out. I'm going to see who this is. Because if they were in the camp, the camera would have picked him up. And he got home. He said, you wouldn't believe what I found. And I said, I'm suspecting it wasn't a person. And he said, yeah, it was a 3-quarter Monday. We're coming into his camp. And we don't know if that was the same group as before, but he said they were in and just prowling around, nosing and moving things around, checking stuff out. And he said, I'm pretty sure that's who stole my spoon and my cup and for some reason drugged my sock back up to the canyon. And it's kind of a funny story because how many times that kind of thing has happened. I had the same thing kind of happen in a similar way. There was all this movement and weird noises outside, and I tried to figure out what it was, and I was up on the rim. And I came out of my tent, and I'm running the flashlight going like, and I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s, but I'm looking around like, what the hell am I hearing, man? And then I suddenly turned my flashlight and just about peed myself because there 4 or 5 feet from me was a cow just staring at me. And I was like petrified for a moment, like, what? But that stuff does happen. And I thought it was pretty funny because he spent a lot of time out, but he still has that little bit of a, a greenhorn thing, and he laughed about it. He said, I was so spooked a couple of those nights, and I was thinking, I'm going to hang in here and solve this mystery. But the mystery was some Quadamunde, which we've run into Quadamunde down in Fish Creek Canyon in the lower sections and all. So very easy to believe story. And when he came out to the rendezvous this last time, he showed me a couple of the pictures of one of them up there, kind of on the rock and stuff. So he got some kind of cool little pictures. Should have had him send them to me. But I didn't think I was going to do this as a story. It's just sometimes you sit there and go like, we need something a little lighthearted, right? So there you go. Another Chasing Legends. He was chasing the Quadamunde, but hey, same thing, right? So that's that. I hope everybody's having a good Thanksgiving, and I hope everybody's going to enjoy their week. So you got to remember, always in your camp, it's not always the mysterious Shadow Men or the Black Legion or some crazy prospector. Sometimes it's just a family of Quadamunde looking for a spoon and a cup. So there you go. So everybody enjoy yourselves. Have a good one. And always remember, most importantly, the most important thing you take away from this is, I'm Wayne Tuttle. You're not. And this was Chasing Legends.